The D12 dev team are pleased to announce our next set of language features for Chartopia. For those familiar with Chartopia, much of the rendering is automatic and there's only so much control over how your content is displayed. So over the last few months we've been making incremental updates to the Chartopia template language, and now we have an example of how these improvements can provide much more flexibility to creators. In short, Chartopia now has functions, objects, and properties. For those familiar with programming languages like Python, C++, etc., they're basically the same thing, but written in such a way as to make them appropriate as a template language. The best way to demonstrate this is with an example, and courtesy of a user's feature request on Reddit many months ago, this example is how to create a random stat block. So we can create a random stat block using the curly brace %sign code block notation. So we can create a myStatBlock variable and call a function called createStatBlock. And generally there are rules, constraints to how you want your stat block to be generated, and we need first a selection of skills or characteristics. And anyone familiar with the Fantasy Flight games as Star Wars RPG, some of these might seem familiar to you. So we got presence, agility, intellect, and willpower. And for this we want each skill to have a minimum of 1 point and a maximum of 5 out of a total pool of 15 points. So we're going to allocate points amongst all those skills. So we have a min point of 1, a max point of 5 out of a total points of 15. Now this by itself doesn't do anything. It's an empty role because it's just a code block. But what we have is the ability to use the default rendering of the myStatBlock object that's been returned. And to do that we can use the new print syntax, which is a double curly braces. So go myStatBlock, do the roll, and now we have the default rendering of a Chartopia stat block. Now that's pretty good by itself, but sometimes you want to have more control over the rendering. So sometimes it's more appropriate to have a bullet point list. So for example, we can use some Markdown's bullet point notation to do lists, and we can do some custom rendering like so. So perhaps we want Brawn to be capital letters with a colon, but now what we can do is use properties. So the stat block has the ability to pull out the individual skill rating for a particular skill. So we can say my stat block and take Brawn, and then take cunning, go that one too, and use the print notation to print the property cunning from the stat block we've created, and we'll just do it presence. And if we do a test roll, we get Brawn, cunning, and presence aligning with the default rendering from the stat block's default print. And that is the end of the example. So the stat block is the first of many functions we intend to add. The next will be the roll-on-chart function, which will return a row object. It's different from the chart macro in that the chart macro, as all the macros, they only return plain text results, so you can't actually drill into them to pull more data out. So a roll-on-chart function would return a result object, meaning we can extract, say, like column titles or the data separately, so that you can do your own custom rendering. So if you have any questions or comments, feel free to contact us via any of the social medias, and if you like what you see, be sure to visit our Patreon page.